Humanity had always carried something different in its heart, something that could not be measured by machines or captured by logic alone. From the earliest days when people lit fires in dark caves to the time when rockets broke free of Earth's gravity, one thing had remained constant: curiosity. It was this endless hunger to know, to see, and to reach farther that made humans stand apart from many other civilizations in the galaxy. Aliens had been watching humanity for a long time. They were far older, far more advanced, and far more cautious. To them, curiosity was a weakness, a flaw that often led to danger. Many alien species had chosen safety over risk. They built perfect cities, they designed powerful machines, and they lived lives free of struggle. But in choosing safety, they gave up something else: the drive to push beyond their limits. Humans, on the other hand, never stopped pushing. They climbed the highest mountains not because they needed to, but because they wanted to know what was at the top. They sailed across oceans, not knowing if they would ever return, because they wanted to discover what was beyond the horizon. They looked up at the stars and felt a pull so strong that even when they had nothing but simple telescopes and weak rockets, they still dreamed of walking among the stars. This nature of humanity confused and amused the aliens who observed them. To the aliens, it was reckless. Why would anyone risk their life for something uncertain? Why would anyone leave comfort and safety just to step into the unknown? But to humans, that question had a simple answer: because the unknown was waiting, and it called to them. The idea of an alternate dimension had existed in human imagination long before science gave it a name. Ancient stories, myths, and legends spoke of hidden worlds, places where reality shifted and time moved differently. Some called them spirit worlds, some called them heavens, others imagined them as dreamscapes or realms beyond death. For thousands of years, these ideas stayed only as stories. But in the hearts of humans, there was always a small voice whispering, what if those stories were real? What if another world truly existed just beyond sight? By the time humanity entered the age of advanced technology, this curiosity became more than just imagination. Scientists began to study strange patterns in energy, odd shifts in space, and signals that didn't fit the normal laws of physics. Most alien civilizations had noticed these things too, but ignored them. They considered them dangerous to touch, like fire in a dry forest. But humans, once again, did not turn away. Instead, they asked, what if this is the doorway to something greater? What if this is the next step in our journey? The first human attempts to study these anomalies were clumsy. Machines failed, experiments collapsed, and entire projects were laughed at. Many alien observers shook their heads, calling humans foolish. They thought humanity was wasting resources and risking lives for a dream that would never come true. But what they didn't understand was that failure never stopped humans. In fact, failure fueled them. Each failure was not an ending, but a lesson, a step closer to finding the truth. Deep inside secret laboratories and research stations orbiting faraway planets, human teams worked tirelessly. They stayed awake through long nights, writing numbers, building strange machines, and starting over when things broke apart. They had little money compared to alien empires, but they had determination. Some even risked their lives testing dangerous equipment, knowing it could explode or tear apart. And yet, no one gave up. Among the humans, there was a belief stronger than any doubt. If there is another dimension, we will find it. And if we find it, we will step inside. This was not just science anymore. It was a matter of spirit. For humanity, discovery was not about glory or wealth. It was about proving that nothing in the universe could silence their will to know more. Aliens, who once thought themselves far superior, began to watch more closely. They were surprised by the humans' stubbornness. Other civilizations had tried once or twice, failed, and then abandoned the idea forever. Humans failed hundreds of times and kept going. To the aliens, this made no sense. But to humans, it made perfect sense. They believed that the most important discoveries only came to those who refused to stop searching. As the years passed, humanity's technology improved. Each generation of scientists built upon the work of the last. Each small step was recorded, studied, and turned into something greater. Slowly, humanity began to notice patterns others had missed, strange echoes in space, signals that bounced back from nowhere, particles that behaved as if they were slipping between realities. It was as if the universe itself was whispering to them, daring them to keep going. Still, the warnings from alien civilizations were constant. "You don't know what you're doing," they said. "You are playing with forces beyond your control. You will destroy yourselves." Some aliens even laughed openly, convinced that humans would eventually vanish in one of their experiments. But instead of fear, these warnings only strengthened the resolve of humanity. They believed that risk was the price of progress. If no one dared to take the risk, no one would ever discover anything new. One day, in a hidden research station orbiting a quiet star, something happened that changed everything. A machine designed to detect space distortions suddenly came alive. Lights flickered, alarms rang, and numbers on the screen jumped higher than ever before. For the first time, humanity had proof that another dimension might not just be theory. It might be real. This discovery filled human hearts with both fear and excitement. Fear, because they knew they were standing at the edge of something no one fully understood. Excitement, because it was exactly what they had been searching for all along. Many alien civilizations, upon hearing the news, dismissed it immediately. "It's a trick," they said. "It's an error in the data." But deep inside, even the most doubtful aliens felt a chill. They knew humanity would not stop here. Humanity would keep digging, keep searching, until they found a way to cross over. What the aliens didn't realize was that this was only the beginning. Humanity's curiosity was not just unshakable, it was unstoppable. They had climbed mountains, crossed oceans, and reached the stars. Now their eyes were set on something far greater. And while the aliens doubted, humanity prepared for the next step, ready to face whatever waited on the other side of reality itself. The story of humanity had always been about refusing to accept limits, and now, at the edge of the unknown, they were ready to write the next chapter. The universe was watching, the aliens were waiting, and the humans, driven by their endless curiosity, were about to prove once again that no frontier could hold them back. The discovery of strange signals and distortions had lit a fire in humanity's heart. For years, the dream of reaching another dimension had felt like a distant vision, something whispered about in theories and books, but never truly close. Yet, after countless failures, one unexpected moment changed everything. That moment became known as the first breakthrough. It did not happen with fireworks or loud celebrations. It happened in the silence of a hidden research station, far away from crowded planets and noisy cities. The scientists who had been working there were tired, many of them surviving on little sleep, but none of them were willing to stop. They had been running experiment after experiment, most of which ended in nothing. The screens would flicker, the machines would hum, and then silence would return. But this time, something was different. On one ordinary day, a small test was set to run. The machine was built to create tiny rips in energy fields, a controlled attempt to see if reality could bend just a little. At first, it looked like every other test. Numbers blinked on the screen, energy levels rose, and everyone prepared for another failure. But instead of shutting down, the machine kept going. A strange vibration filled the air, almost like the sound of a distant storm. Then, for the first time, they saw it. A ripple. It was small, barely larger than the size of a coin, but it was real. Space itself seemed to bend in front of their eyes. Colors shimmered, light twisted, and for a moment it felt as if the room was connected to something else. The scientists froze, unable to breathe. They knew what they were seeing was impossible by normal laws. Yet there it was, undeniable. This moment became the turning point. Humanity had proof. The first ripple was unstable, lasting only a few seconds, before vanishing. But those few seconds were enough. The readings, the recordings, and the images gave humans what they had been chasing for centuries, evidence that another dimension was not only theory, but reachable. News spread quickly, though carefully. At first, only a small circle of leaders and researchers knew. They debated fiercely, asking if they should continue or stop. Some argued that it was too dangerous. "We don't know what lies on the other side," they said. "We could open a door we can never close." Others, however, believed this was the very purpose of humanity's existence. "We were born to explore," they replied. "If a door has appeared, we must step through it." The aliens who heard whispers of this event were shocked. Most of them had tried similar experiments long ago but abandoned them after failures. To them, bending reality was like touching fire. You might burn everything you have. They could not believe that humans had actually created a ripple. Many aliens dismissed it as luck, a chance accident that would never be repeated. But deep down they knew the truth. Humans would not stop now. Back on the research station, the work grew more intense. Teams studied every detail of the breakthrough. They measured the energy, the frequency, the vibration, and even the strange sounds that echoed during the ripple. Everything mattered. Every number might hold the key to making it happen again. Days turned into weeks and the station buzzed with life, but breakthroughs are never smooth. The second test failed completely, destroying part of the machine. The third caused a blackout that nearly stranded the crew in space. Some scientists began to fear they were walking into disaster. But even then, no one left. They repaired the machine, rebuilt the systems, and tried again. It was during one of these attempts that something unexpected happened. As the ripple formed again, small objects in the room began to behave strangely. A pen lifted into the air and floated for a few seconds before dropping back. A cup of water rippled as if touched by invisible hands. For a brief moment, gravity itself seemed confused. The team stared in awe. The ripple wasn't just a doorway, it was affecting reality itself. The aliens, watching from a distance, were unsettled. They had always thought humans were reckless, but now they realized humans were making real progress. Some alien councils, gathered in secret, debating whether to intervene. "If they succeed, they will gain knowledge that even we fear," one leader said. "They might disturb forces that should remain untouched." But others disagreed. "Let them try," they said. "Perhaps their stubbornness will teach us something we forgot long ago." Meanwhile, humanity's determination only grew. With each test, even the failures, they learned more. They began to design stronger machines, machines that could hold the ripple for longer. They sent signals into the distortion, hoping for an answer, but received nothing. Still, they believed. Somewhere on the other side, a dimension was waiting. One night, after months of preparation, the team ran their most daring experiment yet. The energy built higher than ever before, and the room shook as if the walls themselves were alive. Suddenly, a ripple appeared, but this time it didn't vanish quickly. It grew. From the size of a coin, it stretched into a shimmering oval, large enough for a person to walk through. Everyone in the room froze. The oval glowed faintly, its surface rippling like water touched by the wind. They could see nothing beyond it, only shifting colors and shapes that made no sense to the human eye. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. For the first time, humanity stood at the threshold of another reality. No one dared to step forward. The machine was unstable, the portal shaking as if it might collapse at any moment. but even standing near it was enough to prove their achievement. The first true breakthrough had come, a doorway, however unstable, into another dimension. When the oval finally collapsed, silence filled the room. No one spoke for several seconds, their hearts still racing. They all knew that history had just been made. Humanity had reached farther than ever before. They had touched the edge of another world. The news of this success could not be hidden forever. Whispers reached alien ears, and this time, no one laughed. They were not amused, they were not dismissive. They were alarmed. For the first time, they realized that humans were not simply dreamers. They were doers. And if humans could create a doorway once, they would do it again, until one day they stepped through. Back on Earth and across human colonies, excitement spread like fire. People spoke of the door, the rift, the gateway. To ordinary people, it was hope. To leaders, it was power. To scientists, it was a puzzle waiting to be solved. But to the aliens watching, it was something else entirely. It was the beginning of a story that would change the galaxy forever, because the first breakthrough was not the end. It was only the start. The ripple, the oval, the shimmering light, all of it was a promise that there was more out there. And if there was more, humanity would find it. No warning, no fear, no danger could hold them back now. The unshakable curiosity that had led them to this point would carry them even farther. They had opened the first door, and soon they would step through. The day of the phase shift was not marked on any calendar. No one could have predicted the exact moment it would happen, yet for those who were present, it became a memory they would carry for the rest of their lives. Humanity had been walking toward this moment for centuries, chasing a dream of stepping beyond the limits of their world, and now the dream was finally standing at their doorstep. The research station had been buzzing with activity for weeks. Everyone knew they were close. But close was not the same as certain. Machines were temperamental, the equations were fragile, and every test carried the risk of collapse. Still, there was no hesitation in the team. They had tasted possibility, and once humans tasted possibility, they never let go. On that day, the air felt different. The hallways echoed with footsteps and hurried voices. Screens glowed with endless streams of numbers, and the control chamber smelled faintly of hot metal and electricity. Everyone had their eyes fixed on the main platform, where the largest version of the machine yet built stood waiting. The machine looked both beautiful and dangerous. It was a ring of shining metal, towering above the floor, lined with hundreds of tiny lights that pulsed like the heartbeat of a living creature. Thick cables ran from the ring into the walls and floors, carrying the energy it needed to bend, the very rules of reality. It was not just technology, it was the symbol of everything humanity had fought for, the proof of their relentless will to discover. When the countdown began, silence swept through the chamber. The hum of the machine grew louder with each second, filling the air with a vibration that seemed to settle deep into the bones of everyone present. Energy surged through the cables, and sparks of light began to dance around the edges of the ring. Then it happened. At first, it was only a shimmer like heat rising from asphalt on a summer day. Then it grew into a ripple, stretching across the empty center of the ring. Colors swirled, twisting into patterns that no human eye had ever seen before. The ripple deepened, and suddenly, the space inside the ring no longer looked like the room they were standing in. It looked like something else, something vast and shifting, alive with motion. The scientists stared, their hearts pounding. This was no simple ripple, no fragile oval that flickered for a moment before vanishing. This was stable. The gateway was open. For a few moments, no one moved. They could hear the crackling hum of the machine, the faint rush of air as if a breeze was blowing from another world, and their own rapid breathing. It was both terrifying and beautiful. The impossible had become real. Then came the unexpected. As the gateway stabilized, a sudden pulse of energy burst out from it. The lights in the room flickered, the walls shook, and the ground seemed to tilt beneath their feet. A wave of force rippled through the chamber, and for a moment every person felt as if their bodies had been stretched and pulled. Objects floated upward, tools, papers, even chairs, before dropping back as the force calmed. The scientists looked at one another, their faces pale but their eyes wide with wonder. The machine had not only opened a doorway, it had shifted them. Reality itself had bent for a heartbeat. They had experienced the very thing they were chasing, a phase shift. No one knew what to say. Words seemed too small for what had just happened. Humanity had taken its first real step into another dimension, even if only for seconds. Far away, in hidden corners of the galaxy, alien eyes were watching. Their instruments had picked up the surge of energy. Councils gathered in hushed meetings, their voices filled with disbelief. "It cannot be," some said. "Humans are too young, too reckless." Yet the evidence was undeniable. The humans had done what others had feared to attempt. They had broken through. On the research station, the celebration was quiet but powerful. Some scientists wept openly, others laughed in disbelief. A few simply sat down, staring at the still glowing ring as if afraid the moment might vanish if they looked away. For so long, humanity had been told their dreams were too big, their reach too far. And now, standing in front of that shining doorway, they knew no dream was beyond them, but breakthroughs always carried shadows. The phase shift had been more violent than expected. The machine had drained more energy than planned, nearly overloading the station's power systems. Alarms blared, systems flickered, and for a tense few minutes it seemed the entire station might tear itself apart. The team scrambled, shutting down secondary systems, stabilizing the core, and reinforcing the chamber. Sweat poured down their faces as they fought to keep control. Finally, the danger passed. The gateway flickered and closed, leaving only the quiet hum of cooling machinery. The room felt strangely empty without the swirling light. But in that emptiness lay something greater than fear, hope. The phase shift event became a story told in whispers at first, then in shouts across the colonies. People spoke of how reality itself had bent. They spoke of floating objects, of colors that could not be described, of the strange pull that made them feel both heavier and lighter at once. To some, it sounded like magic. To others, it was the next step of evolution. What mattered most was that it was real. Humanity had proven it was possible to cross into the unknown. They had not fully stepped through yet, but they had touched the threshold, and the memory of that moment burned in their hearts. For ordinary people across Earth and the colonies, the news spread like wildfire. Some cheered, dreaming of new worlds and endless opportunities. Others trembled, fearing what lay beyond. Parents told their children that the world was bigger than anyone had ever imagined. Teachers spoke of courage and curiosity, reminding their students that exploration had always been humanity's path. And the aliens? They watched with mixed emotions. Some were impressed, even admiring the humans' courage. Others were frightened. To them, humans were like children playing with fire, yet children who refused to let the fire go. More than one alien leader warned their people, if humans can phase shift once, they will do it again. And when they do, the galaxy will change. By the end, the phase shift event was more than a scientific achievement. It was a declaration that humans would not be bound by fear, by rules, or by the warnings of those who came before. They were ready to risk everything, even their own reality, to see what waited beyond. That day, humanity did not just bend space. They bent history. They showed the universe what it meant to dream without limits, to risk without hesitation, and to stand unshaken in the face of the impossible. The phase shift had only lasted minutes, but it marked the beginning of something much greater, something that would echo across generations, something that would make the universe itself stop and listen. And though the machine now sat silent and the gateway was closed, everyone who had been there knew the truth. Humanity would open it again. The next time, they would not just stand at the edge. The next time, they would step through. The phase shift event had ended, but its echoes were only just beginning to spread. Inside the research station, the scientists were still catching their breath. Some leaned against the walls, their hands trembling, while others continued to check the readings again and again, afraid they had dreamed the entire thing. The machine stood silent now, its lights slowly dimming, as if it too was resting after the tremendous effort it had just performed. But beyond that room, far beyond the walls of the station, something invisible had happened. The energy wave released. The phase shift did not stop at the edges of the laboratory. It traveled outward, first through the station, then into the surrounding void of space, and then farther still. Like ripples spreading across the surface of a vast cosmic ocean, the shock wave moved silently, carrying with it the undeniable mark of what humanity had achieved. At first, no one outside the station knew. Ordinary people continued their lives, eating, meals, working their shifts, talking with their families. They had no idea that reality itself had just been touched and reshaped by human hands, but the universe knew. In distant star systems, alien civilizations had sensors tuned to detect unusual cosmic energy. When the wave reached them, alarms flared and data streams filled their control rooms. On one planet, deep within a spiral galaxy, a council of leaders gathered in their grand chamber. They stared at the glowing charts on their screens, their voices rising in disbelief. "This energy pattern," one of them said slowly, "it is not natural. It is controlled, engineered." Another leaned closer, her eyes narrowing. "Who could have done this?" The answer came quickly, almost whispered. The humans. The word carried weight. For years, humanity had been underestimated. To the older civilizations, humans were still a young species, reckless and emotional, always reaching higher than their place allowed. Many saw them as dreamers, some as troublemakers, but very few considered them truly dangerous. That belief began to crumble the moment the shockwave passed through their systems. In another corner of the galaxy, far from the council's chamber, a military outpost detected the signal. The commander there was silent for a long time as he watched the readings. Finally, he turned to his officers and spoke words that carried a cold warning. "If the humans can bend reality, then nothing will stop them from spreading across the stars." The shockwave touched more worlds, carrying whispers of fear, curiosity, and awe. Some alien scholars studied the data with fascination, eager to learn from the humans' achievement. Others urged caution, warning that such power could destabilize entire regions of space. And then there were those who panicked, convinced that this was the beginning of something unstoppable. Meanwhile, back on Earth and in human colonies, news of the event began to spread. At first, it was only rumors, strange stories told by those who had connections inside the research team. They spoke of floating objects, of impossible lights, of the feeling that their bodies had been stretched and remade. Most listeners scoffed, dismissing it as exaggeration. But then, official announcements came, carefully worded, but filled with enough truth to ignite a fire in every heart. Humanity had done the impossible. They had created a gateway to another dimension. The world changed overnight. In crowded cities, people filled the streets, celebrating with cheers and laughter. In schools, teachers paused lessons to discuss what the discovery meant for the future. In quiet homes, families huddled together, wondering what dangers might come with this new power. Hope and fear mixed together, painting every conversation with both light and shadow. Yet the strongest reactions were not on Earth. They were in the galaxies beyond. On a planet covered in silver seas and endless skies, a group of alien historians gathered in their archives. They had studied countless civilizations, tracing the rise and fall of empires across millennia. As they reviewed the shockwave, one of them whispered to the others, "This is the turning point. The humans have crossed the line between what is possible and what is feared. From this moment, the galaxy will never see them the same way again." In another star system, deep underground within a fortress carved into stone, generals argued over strategies. Some wanted to strike quickly, to stop the humans before they grew too strong. Others argued that war would only hasten humanity's rise, for humans had always thrived in struggle. No decision was reached, but one truth became clear to all of them. Ignoring the humans was no longer an option. Back at the station where it all began, the team was unaware of the chaos they had unleashed across the stars. They only knew that they had done something extraordinary. Sitting together in the dimly lit chamber, they felt both proud and uneasy. One of them finally broke the silence. "Do you think they know?" he asked quietly. The others looked at him, puzzled. "Who?" someone asked. "The rest of the galaxy." The words hung heavy in the air. They all knew the answer. Yes, the galaxy knew. The shockwave had ensured it. In the days that followed, strange reports began arriving at human stations. Unidentified, signals were detected near colony borders. Unknown ships appeared at the edges of human space, vanishing before they could be identified. For the first time in years, humanity felt the weight of unseen eyes watching them. And they were right. Alien. Fleets lingered in the shadows, observing, recording, trying to understand just how far the humans had gone. Some came with open minds, considering alliances. Others came with fear, already planning defenses. And a few came with darker intentions, whispering of strikes and sabotage. The shockwave had done more than prove what humans could do. It had forced every species to make a choice, see humanity as a partner in discovery, or as a threat to be contained. The galaxy was divided, but among the humans, unity grew stronger. For once, people across Earth and the colonies shared a single feeling, that they were standing at the edge of something vast. No longer were they only explorers of their own skies. They were explorers of reality itself. Children dreamed of stepping into new dimensions. Elders who had lived through wars and hardships spoke with pride, saying they had lived long enough to see humanity rise higher than ever before. The shockwave had not destroyed them. It had awakened them. And so, even as alien councils plotted and debated, even as fleets moved in secret, even as whispers of fear echoed across distant stars, humanity stood taller. Their achievement had announced to the universe, "We are here, we are ready, and we will not stop." What none of them realized yet, not even the boldest scientists or the wisest alien leaders, was that the phase shift was not just a moment in history. It was a spark that would set fires across the galaxy, fires of wonder, fear, and change. The shock waves would continue to ripple for years to come, shaping destinies and rewriting the balance of power. Civilizations that once ignored Earth would now turn their gaze upon it. Some would come as allies, others as enemies, but all would come because the humans had dared to touch the fabric of the universe itself. And somewhere, in the silence of the stars, the universe seemed to pause, as if waiting to see what humanity would do next. Years passed after the great phase shift event, but the memory of that day never faded. It had become more than a scientific breakthrough. It had become a story passed down in homes, schools, and even across distant colonies. People spoke of it not just as a moment when machines bent reality, but as a turning point when humanity truly declared its place in the universe. At first, many thought the excitement would fade with time. Some believed that once the shock waves settled and life returned to normal, people would forget. But the opposite happened. The phase shift grew in importance as each year passed. It was written into history books, studied in classrooms, and retold in countless versions. For children born after the event, it was a legend they grew up with, a story that gave them courage and pride. The legacy of the phase shift was not only about science. It was about the spirit of humanity itself. The achievement had proven that humans were not bound by fear of the unknown. They had taken risks, dared to touch something no one else had dared to touch, and in doing so, they showed the galaxy that even an ordinary species from a small blue planet could step beyond limits. But legacy is not built on pride alone. It is also built on the changes that follow. The years after the event saw humanity change in ways no one had expected. Technology advanced faster than ever. What was once theory now became practice. Machines that had been prototypes were rebuilt stronger, safer, and more efficient. Engineers refined the phase shift technology, though they moved carefully, knowing the risks it carried. For the first time in history, humans had tools to open doors to places no eyes had ever seen. Exploration reached a new level. Teams were formed to test the gateways created by phase shift energy. Some opened into strange spaces filled with shimmering light, where the laws of physics bent in ways that felt like dreams. Others led to barren dimensions, empty and silent, where nothing existed but endless void. Each journey carried danger, but also discovery. And with every expedition, humanity learned more, not just about the universe, but about themselves. The event also changed how humans saw each other. Before the phase shift, Earth and its colonies often struggled with division. Different nations, different beliefs, different priorities. But when the galaxy turned its gaze upon them, when alien eyes judged their every move, humans found strength in unity. For the first time, there was a shared understanding. If they were to survive in a galaxy full of powerful civilizations, they had to stand together. This unity became one of the strongest parts of the phase shift's legacy. People began to see themselves not only as citizens of a nation or a colony, but as members of a single species, humanity. Of course, not all consequences were peaceful. The event had unsettled the galaxy, and that unease did not vanish. Some alien civilizations feared what humans had done. They saw the phase shift as a threat, a weapon that could not be controlled. Rumors spread of secret councils plotting to limit humanity's rise, of hidden plans to weaken them before they grew too powerful. But there were also those who admired humanity. Some alien scholars reached out, offering knowledge in exchange for cooperation. A few saw the humans as kindred spirits, willing to take risks that others had long abandoned. Slowly, carefully, new alliances were formed, built on curiosity rather than fear. Through it all, humanity carried itself with the same stubborn determination that had led to the breakthrough. They did not boast, nor did they hide. Instead, they moved forward step by step, learning from mistakes, strengthening their foundations, and showing again and again that they were not reckless children but pioneers carving a path no one else dared. The cultural impact was just as great as the scientific one. Art, music, and literature blossomed with inspiration from the phase shift. Painters created vast murals showing humans standing at the edge of glowing gateways. Writers told stories of journeys into alternate worlds, where courage and imagination defined survival. Musicians composed songs that echoed with the rhythm of change, songs that reminded people of the moment they touched the impossible. Even in the smallest corners of human life, the legacy could be felt. A child staring at the stars now dreamed, not only of traveling to other planets but of walking through new dimensions. An elder sitting in a quiet home found comfort in knowing that their species had proven itself to the universe. And for those who had lived through fear and doubt, The memory of that moment became proof that nothing was beyond reach. The phase shift also left a lesson, a warning wrapped inside the triumph. Humanity had learned that great power carried great responsibility. The scientists who first activated the machine had done so with trembling hands, aware that they might unleash forces they could not control. That caution became a permanent part of the legacy. Every experiment afterward carried reminders of that responsibility. Humanity understood that their gift could either build wonders or bring disaster, depending on how it was used. Generations later, the legacy continued. New scientists stood where the pioneers once had, building on their work, pushing the boundaries even further. New explorers stepped through gateways, not with fear, but with determination, ready to face whatever worlds waited beyond and across. The galaxy, even among alien civilizations, the name of humanity was spoken with a different tone. Not as a curiosity, but as a force to be respected. Some alien leaders still whispered warnings, reminding their people to watch the humans carefully. Others spoke with admiration, pointing to them as proof that courage could reshape destiny. And in every corner of the stars, the shockwaves of that first event could still be felt, echoing through decisions, alliances, and the balance of power. But perhaps the greatest part of the legacy was not in science, politics, or even exploration. It was in the simple truth that the event had revealed, that humanity's greatest strength was not their machines, nor their weapons, nor their discoveries. It was their unshakable spirit, their refusal to stop reaching, even when the world told them it was impossible. This spirit lived on in every generation that followed. It inspired leaders to make bold choices, inspired children to dream without limits, and inspired entire communities to believe that no obstacle was too great. And so, when people spoke of the phase shift in later years, they did not speak only of the energy waves or the gateways. They spoke of what it meant. They spoke of the moment when humanity's courage touched the stars and left a mark no power could erase. The legacy of the phase shift was more than an event. It was a promise that humanity would continue to rise, to explore, to dream, and to shape the future, not just for themselves, but for the galaxy that now watched them with both caution and wonder. And in the silence of space, where stars burned quietly and worlds turned unseen, the promise lingered. A reminder to all who looked upon Earth that this small, determined species had already crossed one impossible boundary and would one day cross many more.